Welcome to the She's Bold podcast. I'm Beth Whitman. Hey there, and thanks so much for joining me for another episode of the She's Bold podcast. This is episode 99. Today's guest is author Darcey Steinke. Darcey has a new book out. It's called Flash Count Diary, Menopause, and the Vindication of Natural Life. And you'll have an opportunity to win a copy of that book. I'll tell you how to enter that in just a few minutes. The She's Bold podcast, in case you are new or you just need a reminder, features conversations with women who have inspirational stories to share. They have a wide variety of backgrounds, but the thing that they all have in common is that these women epitomize being bold. But being bold in whatever way that resonates with them. They're stepping out of their comfort zone and making decisions about what's important to them. What makes them special is that they are dedicated to their path. They have passion, they have interests and desires, and they spend their time pursuing those things. They make it a priority. And really, when it comes down to it, it's not magic. It simply means they spend the time on the things they love and enjoy. And that's not out of your reach. It just takes dedication and time and energy. But it's getting up every day and working towards that. What I hope is that you'll find inspiration in these conversations to not just think, oh, that's a nice thing for her to pursue, but to reconsider your own life and what kinds of things you can pursue that are aligned with your interests and passions. How do you want to pursue your dreams? Now, I know these podcasts are having an impact on people, and I love to hear feedback. I really do appreciate it. I just got this email from a woman named Laurence, I think that's how you pronounce it, who said she's been listening to the podcast and that it gives her courage and it gives her strength, and that she's also made some bold choices in her life, and that sometimes she finds it quite hard to stick to the choices that make her really happy because her choices are so unusual. And she goes on to talk about her travels for the past 6 years. She's just been traveling. But I think hearing these conversations gives her, a little bit more confidence. She said, listening to the podcast, it feels like exactly what we need these days, inspirational stories from women. Thank you so much, Laurence. I really do appreciate that. And I do feel it is so important to get these voices out there and to change who we're hearing from and what we're saying. Now, before I tell you about today's guest, who is changing the way we think about our language and the way we think about things, especially when it comes to women, I want to thank my Patreon supporters. These folks enjoy the podcast and show their support with a monthly pledge of $2 or more, just $2 a month. And I've just added some additional benefits. You can get access to bonus content as well as some pretty cool Be Bold swag. By supporting me, you're helping me bring this podcast to you most weeks, because sometimes I am traveling. It's a little bit more difficult. And to help cover costs of editing and hosting and, just in general, keeping the lights on, as they say. You can check out shesboldpodcast.com/Patreon for details. Okay, today's guest is Darcey Steinke. Darcey, as I mentioned, is the author of Flash Count Diary, Menopause, and the Vindication of Natural Life. Fair warning that this is an adult conversation and may not be for everyone, but it's an important conversation in that menopause has been traditionally a topic that isn't often talked about openly. For those going through it, there's a lot of shame around it because of the sometimes very obvious symptoms, most notably hot flashes. But it's also a time of life for women when a lot of emotion and other physical changes can occur. And Darcey's approach is that this is just another chapter in a woman's life and should be embraced, not necessarily looked upon as a medical condition. Now, her book and this conversation are so important to how we view menopause and how we can change our language around it to not be something viewed as a condition or a problem to solve. There is no doubt that you have many women in your life that could benefit from hearing this conversation. So please do share it. Let's get the word out and start thinking about menopause a bit differently. If you would like to win a copy of her book, Flash Count Diary, sign up for the She's Bold podcast newsletter at shesboldpodcast.com/newsletter. And I'll simply alert you each time a new episode is released. I'll give you until the end of the month of July, to sign up for that newsletter, and we'll randomly choose a winner on August 1st amongst all the current subscribers. And that will have to be a winner in the U.S. So apologies, with a U.S. address. So apologies if you're out of the country. Okay, with that, please enjoy this conversation with Darcey Steinke. So the frustrating part is, you had mentioned right before we started recording, because I'm recording now.
Yeah, right.
Snuck that in. That this is a chronic...
Well, the pain is really hard in the morning. It's not bad once I ice it and move around during the day, you can almost forget about it, but the morning is really painful.
And you said this is a herniated disc?
Yeah.
Did you do something that precipitated it? Or
hugely active, swim, free water swimming, swim, yoga, gym, lift weights. I do everything.
So now you're sidelined.
Well, they won't let me swim, which is really annoying to me, but I can.
Oh, that's weird. I would think that would be the most gentle.
I can't arch my back. And so then they want me to do the elliptical. They want me to work on my core, but my core I feel like was good, but elliptical at 25, so it's like.
Oh, super slow.
Yeah, but I guess it really builds the core. I am going to have 6 packs when this is done.
Good.
And lots of, on the floor exercises and stuff. So just have to hope it gets better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So your book just came out.
Let's see, was it the 18th?
Of June?
Of June, yeah.
Of June, wow. So
18th.
So Flash Count Diary.
So 2 weeks ago, more or less, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's a big accomplishment.
Thank you.
Flash Count Diary, Menopause, and the Vindication of Natural Life. Is Flash Count Diary, is that a thing?
Well, when I started to go through hot flashes, I'm a writer, and I found the hot flashes very nuanced and sort of fascinating. I thought they were uncomfortable, but they were also kind of interesting. So, being a writer, I started to keep a journal of them, and I called it my Flash Count Diary. So by the end of the book, I had 3 or 4 of them, and because each hot flash I found a little different. And at first, now I don't think I pay quite attention to them, and now at 57, I have less of them too, which is great.
When did they start for you?
Around 50, 51.
Ooh, so it's been a while.
Yeah, but we're definitely on the downward slope of them, which is great. But they were very subtle and interesting. Sometimes they were not subtle. Sometimes I just, full on body sweat, but sometimes they were just very nuanced. I'd feel hot on my right thigh. And then I would also feel a feeling of steam coming out of my head. And so I just wanted to write, and I had never really read anything about them except for women get hot, but it was so much more than that. There was a spooky feeling that came along with them. There was a little jag of anxiety. And since I've worked on my book and talked to so many scientists, I found out that the reason, part of the reason we get them is these things called candy cells in the back of our, in our hypothalamus, get agitated and get enlarged. And it's the same, and that's what starts the hot flash process. And it's the same process at the beginning as a seizure. So that's why it's not really getting hot. You know what I mean? It's more intense and nuanced than that. So,
and that's the kind of, I think you use the word, and I've read it also, aura.
Yeah.
You feel that aura.
I felt it, yeah. Some women don't, but I definitely did, yeah. And I still do sometimes too. I
have a friend who has petite mal seizures. Mm-hmm. And she used to say, I haven't seen her in a long time, but she would say, I can feel it coming on.
Yeah, right.
And I thought that was the strangest thing. Mm-hmm. And then when I started having hot flashes, I started to dial into that, and I was like, oh, this is what Kathy means.
Yeah, you can feel it.
Yeah, you can feel it a minute, 45 seconds beforehand.
Yeah, I think so too. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I feel like it starts, a lot of women told me it starts with a sort of dart of panic, or a dart of to me, I think I describe it as sort of a shard of a different kind of gloomy reality sort of juts into you. I think it's important to recognize what's happening so you can say, it's not gloomy reality. It's just a hot flash, once you can sort of get used to the fact that this is happening, but you don't really need to necessarily listen to the anxiety. That to me was really helpful. So to write in my flash count diary really helped me because it sort of helped me, okay, this is what's happening. This is what it is. These are all the nuances of it. But they aren't overtaking me. They kind of come and they pass through me. So that helped me a lot to sort of think of it like that.
Within minutes?
Like a weather, kind of like a weather front or something. You stay, the land is the same, but the weather moves through it, right? So just that idea of what it is, that it wasn't sort of going to overwhelm me completely,
I had someone that I was chatting with actually for the podcast who said that when it happens to her, she tries to clue in on the thought that she had right at that time.
Right. Yeah, I've heard people say that.
Thinking that it's a thought that brings it on.
Well, that it's the anxiety of that thought.
Right.
Yeah, that's a thought that it's something anxious.
Do you think that?
I've heard other women say that. I heard, I interviewed about 100 women, and one of them told me that they weren't sure if it was the anxiety that brought the hot flash on, or if the hot flash brought the anxiety on. And I think that's an open question, And I would agree with that,
I think I'm a Buddhist practitioner and a meditator, and so we're taught a lot about just trying to clue in on our thoughts and our thought processes.
Right.
And so I would maintain that we are having stressful thoughts all day long, and it just so happens that one of those is going to coincide.
Yeah,
with a
right,
hot flash.
right,
and
right.
And then you say, "Oh, okay, well, it was because of that thought." But I'm sure that I had 50 stressful or what could have been stressful thoughts, in the preceding 10 minutes.
Right. I have never really noticed that. I don't know. I really never noticed that in particularly stressful situations, I hot flashed more. I did not notice that. Though I noticed they would come on. Mostly for me, it was a closed room, a feeling of heat being a little too, the heat being a little too high, like even a few degrees, I could tell the difference, I don't know. It was all things like that. I could never really link it to my diet either. Like I tried to do a lot of soy to see if that would bring it down. I didn't really feel that worked at all. Definitely swimming. I love swimming, and especially in the summer when I swim across this lake, I would definitely get like a few like completely flash free hours afterwards because I think I had lowered my body temperature.
You lowered your core body temperature.
Yeah. So that was that was the only thing that I could really link it to directly.
Well, I have a philosophy about that too because I'm a runner and I will go out. Sometimes I think I run just to avoid the hot flashes.
Yeah, right.
Because when I'm running, I don't have one, and so my thinking around that is that there may be an adrenaline release during exercise.
Yeah,
Maybe
possible,
it's the same.
yeah.
But I like your theory about that, about like lowering your core temperature when you're swimming. But I think, I know for me, for running, there's probably already an adrenaline release and there's nothing left to flash on.
Yeah. That might be true. Though I would sometimes feel myself not in the lake, but in the pool. I will sometimes, if the pool's a little warmer than I like,
so
I will feel myself having a hot flash while I swim. I'll just swim through it. Like, it doesn't matter, But I have felt that before. So I don't know. They're very mysterious,
I know they are.
Yeah.
But you seem to be looking at it with curiosity, really curious. You're not angry or frustrated, it doesn't sound like.
I feel like the experience of going through menopause has helped me get in touch with my anger, which I think of as extremely positive, actually. But do I feel angry about menopause? No, it's like it would be like being angry. We could be angry about like menstruation or the pain of childbirth, but why? It's just a natural thing, you know what I mean? So I'm not really angry at it. It's more like, it is true that I'm even like I was telling you about my back pain, but I even find that kind of fascinating. I find these things, these struggles also deeply fascinating because they have to do with the human body, which is fascinating. They're not just bad, because that would just be a dumb way to think about it, because this is your life, they're also kind of interesting, so that's how I think about it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. How did it help you get in touch with your anger? You weren't getting angry at them or the process, but it helped. You said it helped you get in touch with your anger.
Yeah. I feel like in both perimenopause and menopause, I just was more aware of my anger. I actually think once the estrogen lifts, I felt a lot more in touch with my anger. I feel like estrogen for me was a very sort of led to this sort of veil of tranquility a little bit, which was good in a way, but was it good? I'm not sure. You know what I mean? I felt like more in touch with my actual real feelings.
Interesting.
It kind of reminds me of, I have a daughter who's 23, and I always tell her those days before your period where, the culture makes fun of you as, a bitch, that's the time when when the estrogen really lifts, I think, where you can really look at your life with a lot of lucidity. You can really look at your life in a way that's very clear. And you also sometimes, it's not that you're bitchy. It's like sometimes you're like there are things I don't like about my life that I want to change, that I'm uncomfortable about. So there's a lot of lucidity during those days. And the hormonal landscape of menopause is the same as that. It's like that lifted estrogen. So I feel like the lifted estrogen helped me understand when I was angry and why more. I felt like I had better boundaries. I could get angry when there was a good reason to get angry, to like stick up for myself. I felt better about that.
I've heard people say, like, as they get older, that they're more apt to just say what's on their mind. And let's just say it's women. Mm-hmm. Although I think the angry old man who's going to just blurt out anything. Right. So I think there's that stereotype too.
True.
But do you think that it's I never thought of it before, but it sounds like you might say that there is this, there is a real physical thing going on there that kind of helps foster that. And that that's a real thing. It's not just like...
Yeah, I think it's partly chemical for sure. Huh. The chemistry of our bodies changes. And even if you decide to go on like HT, which is a completely personal decision, you're not going to quite be replicating like the estrogen of the earlier, of your fertile, your 30s or your 20s or whatever. So you are going to have some hormonal shifts even then. So... I think it's chemical. I guess it would also be maybe this time of life, but I also think it's the things that drop of chemicals brings, the drop of estrogen brings, but also this like period of midlife where I have less and less interest of what people actually think of me physically. I'm just not interested, and I don't know. I just have less interest in being pleasing to other people. Like I'd like to help people. I like to resist, social injustice, but being pleasing, I just don't really care, So I think a lot of those things have sort of flown out the window.
And you think some of that is hormonal, or all of it is
I think
hormonal?
A lot of it's hormonal. Part of the reason we're flooded with estrogen is so we can have children and so we can be fertile. But some of it is so we can be in the domestic, sphere in ways that are, tranquil and calm and, be a mother, be a caring mother. And we don't really need that as much if our kids are out of the house, or it's a different phase, So, I do think it is linked chemically. I think it's life experience as well. I think by the time you're in your 50s, you've lived a while and you sort of know yourself better. I would hope that like more what you want. I know I do.
Well, that's what I would think, that it's very tied in, and it's got to be complicated and so different for every person, because at that point your kids are grown. Mm-hmm. You're not necessarily seeing your children's friends' parents, right, on social occasions, or having to go to a school and present yourself in a certain way. Mm-hmm. You're going to be at some point in your career where it may not matter quite as much to dress to impress, or to look a certain way to impress people. So I think there's a lot of things that are probably...
I think so too. I think it's a nexus of many things. I think it's lived experience, which we can call wisdom, chemical changes, domestic changes in what your sort of focus is as a woman. There's many, many actually things that are coming together to hopefully make women feel more free. That's what I hope,
as I started to have hot flashes a few years ago, the thing, like, first I didn't know what the hell was going on. It's just like this weird thing. But then as I started looking into it and actually talking to, I have a naturopath, and talking to her, I was amazed at how little information there was out there. Even my naturopath, I said, like where do I go for information, and why isn't there more? And she would just say, oh, there is information out there, but I just didn't feel like there was, and maybe it was there wasn't the information that I was looking for or hoped
well, part of
for.
Part of the problem is a lot of the information that's out there. Like I was on there's this wonderful doctor, Pauline Mackey, and I was on a radio show with her recently, and she kept. I really respect her. She's incredible. But she kept referring people to the Menopause Association website, which I'm not against. But, that's basically a lot of doctors who think hormones are the way, and I'm not against that either. But that doesn't mean they're going to get a lot of other like ideas of what it is. It's like, you know what I mean? And as much as I respect her, I kept feeling like I want to break in and say like, well, that's one place to look, but you could also, read my book, or I don't even know what else, but like, so that's part of the problem is a lot of the information that you can get online is always under the dome of people who mostly think, medical and big pharma, who mostly think the best thing to do is to go on HT, which I'm not against, but I'm saying it may not be the best thing for everybody.
Right.
So that's part of the problem is there's not a lot of clean information.
Do you think it's because it's male dominated?
Yeah, I think that's a big problem too. I also think it's considered negative because it's male dominated. I think it's been considered a disease. And also, big pharma wants to sell drugs. They want to sell hormone supplements, women. Do I think that they take advantage of vulnerable women? Absolutely. Like, do I also think some women are helped by hormones? Yes. I think both things are true. So I know when you go online, I remember when I was first doing my searching, I would see the list of hormone symptoms and they would be, or menopause symptoms, and they would be like, atrophied vagina. I'd be like, okay, that's not the way any woman would say it. You know what I mean? And, I talk in my book about this menopause conference I went to, and time after time on these panels, these male gynecologists, would get up and they would say like, oh, the menopausal vagina, it's dry, the walls are thin, it shrinks. And it was all like what it would be to a penis coming into a vagina. Like none of it was what it actually feels like to be a 55-year-old woman having a vagina, and I was just really, it seemed really sad.
And that was an international conference, right?
That was,
these were doctors.
That was experts. That's what I'm sort of saying. And that was the same conference that was actually underwritten by these vaginal rejuvenation, these vaginal laser companies like Mona Lisa Touch and Smooth, that thank goodness, like the FDA finally came out actually last summer and condemned them finally. But it was at the time of the conference, it was still like, so they're paying for like these doctors like plane tickets. You know what I mean? So it's just not clean, And so, and I know a lot of great. Science is amazing, and I love medicine, of course. But like, there's also a lot of problems. When I think about. I feel like the vaginal laser really makes me like very, very deeply sad. But my hope is that it'll be like, when women, were supposed to be hysterics, and there was this thing called the jolting chair that doctors had, where they would like shake them into, basically shake them out of their hysterics. And I'm hoping that the vaginal laser will go the same way as the jolting chair. That's my hope.
You had a really funny, I'm going to pull it up in your book here. You had a really funny, what I found to be kind of an amusing list of, let me find it, the treatments that were used. Never eat sausage, particularly before bed. Sponge the body 3 times a day with aromatic vinegar. Apply several leeches to the anus.
That one's good, right?
That's great.
Yeah.
Fast on milk 1 day out of every 15. Drink the bone marrow of recently killed animals. Get a transfusion of dog's blood.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
But those were medical. those were doctors of the time. Those were actually what doctors wanted you to do.
Right. And so just think of
it wasn't by quacks. It was actual doctors.
Right. And in 20 years or 30 or 50 or however many years, what are we going to look back on and say?
That's what I think. Clearly, thank God for penicillin, right? There's some amazing innovations. But a lot of stuff in science also falls away, right? Like, a lot of medicine falls away, right? That's not really that helpful. It doesn't really actually work, So.
Right. And we're constantly learning.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, exactly. There's kind of like a winnowing process. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I still find it just really strange that there's so little information out there, and the only thing that I can think of is that it's because it is so male dominated, and they have no interest.
Well, I think they have an interest in giving us estrogen and keeping us, keeping our bodies like as a fertile woman, and also, I don't know how much we want to go into this, but then certain sex acts that they really like are still not, are still pleasurable for us and can remain the center of our sex life too. I think that's a part of it as well, But I also think it's female shame. This is driven by a lot of women too. I interviewed about 100 women, and they were very frank, but there were some women that were filled with shame. They wanted to tell me they'd never had menopause, which I knew was impossible. Everyone has something, everybody has, even if it's the most minor symptom in the world, they have something, it's like, so there's shame about talking about it with other women, with your daughters, with your mother, I think there's a lot of shame as well. So I think that keeps it, those things, the idea, those two things, I think it's both things together. I think it's that we live in a patriarchy. And then I also think it's been medicalized as a disease. That's a problem. So the information that we have is about how to cure the disease, not about the incredible experience and struggle and beauty of the passage. And then there's the idea of female shame that keeps women really vulnerable.
So I think I read a statistic once that like 80% of women go through hot flashes.
Yeah,
does that sound about right?
I think so. I think I heard 75, but that's a lot,
Yeah. Do you think that it was like that 100 years ago?
Yeah, I do.
You do?
Why wouldn't it be?
Because I have a theory that some of this is brought on by stress and processed food and a toxic environment and things that weren't around 100 years ago.
It's possible that it's been exacerbated by that, but from, there's a wonderful, one of my amazing resources was this medical library of these old texts, like in New York City. It's incredible. And I found hot flash references from 100, 200, 300 years ago. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't doubt if it's been exacerbated by all those things, but I don't think it was created by all those things.
Mm-hmm. And you think the fact that we didn't hear about it 50, 70 years ago was that our mothers didn't talk about it.
Nobody really talked about it, yeah. And even when you talk to your doctor about it, I found texts, though, from the 1800s and the 1700s that did talk about it. Books about it, that I guess women read. So, I think, the reason, it's like everything like in women's life, there's a breakdown between generations if there's no like oral storytelling. But the phenomena, as long as there's been women, female, humans, like they've been going through like menopause. It was selected probably even before, like slightly before we became like into our human forms, So it's been around for a long time. Yeah.
What makes you so comfortable talking about it?
Well, it's weird. I'm mostly a literary novelist, like very, like in the sort of literary world of New York City and all
right.
Stuff.
This is not your first book.
Not really. Yeah. Well, yeah, I've written a bunch of books and I'm mostly a novelist. But I remember as I went through it and I couldn't find any books about it, I remember thinking like somebody should really write a book about this. And it's funny because I always wanted someone to write a book about it. I never thought in a million years it would be me. Like but it just sort of happened. Like, I learned about the whales, that human women and female killer whales are the two creatures that go through menopause, as well as a few other kinds of whales, beluga whales, short fin pilot whales, and narwhals as well. And that really excited me. I don't know. And I just thought of different ways I could move the idea around. The book is not just about one thing. It's about so many things. I love
that. It's almost poetic.
That would be my general writing style across my career, right?
Yeah.
And so now it's just, I put that filter, you put that lens onto menopause.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting. It's a small book. It can be read in a relatively short amount of time.
Right.
But just even the way that it's laid out in the big paragraphs, and it's beautiful in that way.
Thank you so much.
It's very poetic.
Well, I have a very discursive mind. Like I've never been that linear of a person or a thinker. So the little chunks really help me to bring in a lot of other voices, to bring in like a lot of
the research,
ideas.
Right?
Yeah, so much research. Yeah, right.
Huh. So you didn't feel like you were stepping out in an uncomfortable way to...
at the very beginning, I remember I had the idea, and I do remember having a few conversations with some of my friends. And it's funny because now these friends, they really don't remember this, but I can remember. And it may be that I'm projecting because there might have been a slight feeling of shame even of myself. I can remember having some conversations where I can remember one friend saying, well, if you do that, then you'll be like the menopause lady. And then I was like, but that made me be just like, so what? You know what I mean? Like, why not? Like, you know what I mean? Like, why? My feelings about it are kind of punk rock. They're sort of like, this is ridiculous that we're not talking about it. And we need to get it out there, and some of the ideas around it really need to be reframed. The more I worked on it, that's where my anger really helped me. Like I did feel myself getting really angry when I would read some of these old like medical books, when I would talk to even some of these current doctors. I felt myself I got really angry at the menopause conference, but rather than
because that's today, like
that's
there's
now,
still,
yeah.
right, that is now,
yeah.
And they're still talking like that.
Yeah, it was really hard for me, but I used that anger to fuel the book, so like I made something out of that anger that I hope is like beautiful and, I hope helps people. So, but I did feel myself getting really angry. Just the anger, just really the way it's been treated, the shame that's been engendered in women. It's just kind of like bullshit, It really is. And it's just like boilerplate misogyny. I mean, it's just the lowest kind of misogyny, and it really needs to be like called out. It really,
and
really
reframed.
Does. Totally
like you
reframed.
said, with the words, the language around it, just kind of embracing the language.
Yeah, I mean, my hope would be if women could look forward to like puberty, sexuality, pregnancy and birth, and also menopause. In those. I mean, that seems almost impossible now. But I know there are new things like happening. Like I just read, because my book just came out like in England, and they're a little bit ahead of us there as far as accepting it. I mean, they're doing quite well actually there. I mean, they're really...
Because it's more in the lexicon, you mean?
There was a big, every year the state pays for like one big topic to be discussed, and this year it's menopause. And they're just the studies based on how women feel shame in the workplace. They're just doing a little better. They're a little bit more on it. Like actually I read somewhere where like a company was going to have cold rooms for when women, had hot flashes.
Wow.
Which is like unheard of.
Yeah.
But I also read that maybe it was like the Minister of Education or something said that they're going to teach about menopause in the schools for the first time. And that would be a good start. I mean, no one ever taught me about menopause. I mean, I can remember we were separated off to hear about menstruation, and then maybe we heard a little bit about birth, but it would just help to talk about it, to teach it to boys and girls as just a normal life cycle.
Yeah. Except it happens so much later though. You know what I mean? Like if you want to teach them at 13 years old.
But at least they have a reference point though. And also, their moms are going to go through it, actually not so far away. Maybe, like if you teach them at 16, their moms might be in it now. They might be in it in 10 years. I don't know. I think you would do a lot of good by. I think that's would be a really strong place to start.
It's not a bad idea at all.
Yeah.
Hey, you brought up the whales. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about that? And you mentioned that they're the only other animal. Is that right? The only animal who goes through menopause.
Well, that's really what got me interested in writing the book. I don't know if I would have written the book if I hadn't found that fact out. Because what happened is I was really searching around for some good texts. And then I saw, like, the New York Times, this little article that said that the two creatures that go through, I think when I read the article, they just thought it was killer whales and women, but now they found out that it's a few more kinds of whales. But they go through menopause. That fascinated me. I went right to the article Nature, the journal Nature, where the scientific article was printed. Actually, I read that, and it was amazing to me. Like, they not only go through menopause, but they also have a long post-reproductive life, a 30, 50-year, like Granny J2, who just died like in 2016. She lived to be 105. And they also become the leaders of their pods. Like, around 45, they start to lead their pods. So they become the post-reproductive pod leaders. The article also pointed out that, because there's a lot of confusion. Like one scientist told me that menopause is a big, huge evolutionary puzzle, because according to Darwinian fitness, which means having as many children as possible, like before you die, which is what most creatures do. They're fertile right till the end. Menopause makes no sense. Like, why would we stop breeding at the midpoint of our lives? So through studying the whales, but then also thinking about hunters and gatherers, and this is part of this thing called the grandmother hypothesis too, which is there's a few different theories about why menopause was selected. It's just this idea that at around 50. What happened in hunter and gatherer communities as well, as whale communities, is that like women got so smart and so valuable to the community as leaders, and grandmothers to a certain extent too. It was important to have two groups of women. One, actually doing the very important work of mothering and having babies and taking care of those children, and then this this older group to actually lead their communities, to care for their grandchildren, but also to. They knew if there was a flood, like which plants were poisonous and which plants weren't. This was, of course, before technology, right? So, before there were books even. So how to help, before psychology, like how to help young people get along, together, like how to breastfeed babies. They knew, they had all this important information that actually, so to take them out of the, birth pool, which gets riskier and riskier as we age, right? Made a lot of sense. So I love that idea so much that I was like, okay, that's it. And so I got obsessed with the whales. I started to watch them on YouTube. I listened to the San Juan Island, the Harrow Strait. Actually, they have a hydrophone there. And I listened to when they would come around on the hydrophone was amazing, like on my computer. And I eventually came out twice to Seattle, and then took the ferry over to the San Juan Islands to Friday Harbor. And then I eventually got to see the whales, which was an incredible experience, like on a sea kayak. I really wouldn't go see the whales on a motorized boat because it's bad for them. But I felt like, the sea kayak was a less intrusive way to see them, So that was a big part of the book, was just feeling inspired by them. And particularly J2 Granny, who just was the leader of JK and L Pod. And she was just, I would watch her on YouTube and she'd be like breaching and spy hopping. And I mean, nobody's telling her that her vagina, is like atrophied. You know what I mean? Like, she's just like a creature doing her life, it's like, and it just inspired me so much to see such like majesty and such grandeur. I just loved it. So that pulled me through the book a lot. Like that's not the only thing the book is about, but that made me want to write the book, and the journey of coming out and seeing the whales really inspired me. Yeah.
So in cultures where older people are more revered, did you find any research, or did you look into it at all, that language wasn't used? Like, let's say in an older population in Japan, that comes to mind.
Yeah, they have less. I mean, in Japan, it's weird. They report less hot flashes, which might be because of the soy, but they do report symptoms though, particularly neck pain and back pain. So they do report. Yeah,
it's because they're pulling up rice all day, I mean,
well, not all of them.
Well, no, but
very few of them actually are doing that.
Well, I'm thinking,
let's go back on that.
No. I guess what I'm saying about that, and I don't mean it to be disparaging at all.
Right.
What I'm saying is, like, in some of these communities, like the communities where there is longevity, the blue zones.
Right.
They talk about, these are the people who are out working in the fields. They're doing the physical activity, and they're in the fields,
and they're never not.
Right.
And they have low-fat diets, all that stuff. Yeah,
right.
I think that's
But you're
true.
still saying across the board.
Well, I found too, I didn't do this. I read some books about this and I talked to one professor, but I wasn't able, I always wanted to work this research in, but I couldn't find a way to. I think partly because my book is about me, and then I link everything else to my own experience. So it was hard for me to figure out how it fit. But I found some amazing things. I remember there were two communities. I'm not going to be able to remember the names of these communities, but one was in India, where they were mostly in communities where there were a lot of like restrictions on women before menopause. But then after menopause, I remember there was like one community, in India, where after menopause, the women could like come down after dinner and smoke and drink with the men and have conversations with the men.
Interesting.
And with the older women. And that was a real privilege. But before menopause, they could not. So in those cultures, there are less menopausal symptoms reported, partly because there's good things that happen at menopause. Like, no one's calling you like a old crone or a hag. You're actually getting more freedom. You know what I mean? Like more actual freedom.
Yeah, it's lucky.
Yeah. And then there was a place in Mexico as well where it was menopause, where like, especially in families that several generations like live together, right? Where your daughter took over the domestic duties once you went into menopause. So that was also considered very happy. Like, you're very
like
hard
to celebrate. Sure.
Yeah, you're very hard work, like taking care of the family, and the extended family was now. You didn't have to be the head of the household. Like you could help, but you didn't have to be fully in charge. So in that community, less menopausal symptoms were like reported as well. So that was really interesting to me, that if real freedom comes from it and it's honored, then there's actually like, either they don't recognize the symptoms because the pluses are so great, or they don't even feel like they have the symptoms, which is really fascinating. Yeah,
which would be nice for sure. You had said something in your book about, I think when you were going through menopause or just starting it, that your femininity was in question at that point.
Right.
I think you mentioned that your hair got a little more straw-like.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
How did you feel questioned at that point? Were you questioning yourself, or was it, what does this mean to me to be a woman?
Well, I think maybe both. I mean, I feel like I think I say in the book that I can remember it like in my early 50s a few times, like I brought my car, or I was parking my car or something, and the attendant said, "Thank you, sir." And I was like, wow, that's interesting, But I also felt inside, I mean, the more profound thing and the kind of exciting thing was inside myself. I felt less like traditionally female. It wasn't really about the way I looked as much, though that was part of what the world was saying about me. And it was hard not to sort of acknowledge that. But what I'm saying is it's more like, and this is where the wonderful world of trans people have helped us so much, like, with this kind of language and being able to share their experiences with us. And really, the trans memoirs really helped me more than any menopause book did, because it was more the way I felt inside. I just felt less traditionally female. Like I felt less like femi, less sort of interested in traditionally, female things. And I just felt a little more, not, sometimes I say in the middle, but that's not really what I mean. I just felt like I sort of pulled out I felt sort of unshoored from my former, fertile female self. And I liked it. And it was good. I mean, it was like, that sounds kind of biblical. Like it was good and I liked it, but I did feel that way. Like it felt like a great relief, and it also felt kind of exciting, to be out from under some of that, like
expectation.
Well, also, but I'm thinking more in a subjective way. So like, just like, I was a person, I mean, I think everybody is probably like this, but, I thought about sex a lot, thought about sex less, which I liked, and I wasn't worried as much about derailing my life, with some sexual mishap. I felt like much steadier there. I felt, I don't know, like more interested in sex as a way to connect to, like, with a human being than with like, I'm a woman and you're a man. You know what I mean? Like, not that I don't like adore my husband, but like, it just changed, and I felt it seemed very positive to me. And it seemed like very, like it made me feel that my earlier self seemed a little fake. But I think that always happens when, I think your earlier manifestations often feel fake once you're outside of them.
When you're looking back, sure.
Yeah. Like you think, wow, that was like, who was I? That was a crazy person. But it definitely made me feel like a little fake in my like former life, and a little more authentic now.
I think it's really interesting. This has nothing to do with menopause, but it just triggered something in me. It's like, I find it really interesting that we change so much in a lifetime. Mm-hmm. And, that people often say, oh, people don't change. Like
right.
People are just the way they are.
Right.
But we are such different humans than we were 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
So true. Yeah.
It's
amazing.
Yeah,
really,
it is really amazing.
I mean, there's an essential self, I think, that stays the same, but there's also like so many, it's just such change.
Well,
like
I think if you don't believe that, or you don't admit that, then I think you are really missing out on something.
Yeah,
because if you think that you have to be the person that you were 10 years ago, or you believe that...
Well, that's part of the problem, though, that's why the lack of information about menopause, feeling like, let's go back to the hormonal configuration of when you were 30. There's a lot of, like, to stay the same, like the culture tells women to stay the same.
And that's what hormone replacement therapy actually does. Is that right? Because I don't know anything about it. I haven't even looked into that as a possibility. But that's what it does.
It brings you back to an earlier hormonal configuration. Yeah, that's what HT is. Yeah, and it can. Some people think that's our healthiest time. I don't really agree with that, but that is part of what it does, I think. But that's the part of the not wanting to change. The idea that some earlier manifestation is a better one than the one we're in now.
Right. Because it's younger too.
Because it's younger. Yeah. And more socially acceptable, like more culturally exciting. You're young, you're whatever. It's like, I think there's a lot of work to be done. It's kind of hard. Somebody asked me recently, I've been going all over with my book, and someone said something about the fountain of youth. And I'm like, we found the fountain of youth. It's our brain. You know what I mean? We've already found it. You know what I mean? It's like, it's your brain that's going to make you, it's your brain. It's the way you think about the world. It's going to make you feel, I don't want to say young, but, more adventuresome, wise. There doesn't really need to be like a special cream, you know what I mean? Like, or a special elixir that like you're going to find that makes you feel young, and that idea is partly attached to hormones, right? Like it's going to be something that's going to keep you young.
Right. But also it's what we look on the magazine covers.
Yeah, it's true.
It's the physical presence.
Yeah.
That's so much of what it is. And I think that's what happens too, is around that age. It might happen to somebody else at 40, but at 50 and beyond, you start realizing your eyes start going, and things start happening,
body,
right?
Sure,
exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot of I think that anti-aging is a lot about looks.
Yeah.
Maybe not all, but certainly 90% of it is.
But the thing is, though, it's not a successful strategy. You know what I mean? Like, if you really want to feel like in your
Well, it is for
self.
Nicole Kidman.
But is it a successful strategy for her? I don't know.
Well,
I don't know.
I guess
I disagree. I don't really feel like trying to look younger is a successful strategy to the game of life. I just feel like it's not one that is really going to get you to a more enlightened, bigger place, you know?
True. But I think when people are researching and wanting an anti-aging pill
Right.
or a prescription,
Right.
I think it has to do with the looks, and then I think it has to do with then it makes me think of Hollywood,
Right,
and all
right.
the surgeries and
Right, the
and the
surgeries,
facelifts
yeah.
and that
That's
kind of thing that are going on.
That's very dark.
Yeah, that's why I bring up Nicole.
There's a lot of darkness there.
Yeah, there
it's
is.
very dark.
But yes, I think internally, I absolutely agree with you. And then we talk about health and exercise, and,
Right,
and
yeah,
what
no,
we're
I
putting
think
into our
Oh,
bodies.
that's amazing too. Yeah, that's all very important.
So you are going through something right now. You're standing up.
Yeah, I am.
As we're talking,
Yeah.
because you've got a chronic.
Well, I got a herniated disc. It started in February, and I don't know. It's still not really. I mean, maybe it's 10% better, but it's been frustrating, definitely. You know, and it's reminded me again. You know, the breakdown of the body. It's hard. It's hard because it's not just. Though I don't know, people keep telling me like, I had a herniated disc when I was 25. I had a herniated disc when I was 30, you know, but it's hard as you get older. I think the things that break the body down, it's really hard. I mean, it's one thing to think like, I'm going to decrease with grace, but when it actually happens to you, you're sort of like, I don't want to be in pain, you know? So it's been a struggle.
Well, nobody wants to be in pain, for sure.
Yeah.
And if you don't see an end to it, then it can be even more difficult.
Yeah, it's scary. I mean, there's no one has said to me this will go on forever. Everyone has said, this is what it is. You in physical therapy, you do this. It's going to like take this amount of time. I'm not a person who's at all interested in spine surgery, but if it went on for a year and a half, I might consider that, you know, I mean, but nobody has said that to me. So I know it's just a matter of, you know, taking care of myself and waiting, you know.
And you said you're much more empathetic now. Before we started recording, you said you have a lot more empathy for somebody.
I've always been empathetic. I feel like I didn't really, it just kind of opened up like, wow, there's a lot of people living with chronic pain. I mean, there are so many people that don't even have health insurance, you know, like, I mean, I'm lucky enough to go to a good doctor and have physical therapy, but it just really made me realize, like, you see people struggling, like to walk or walking in strange ways, but you know, really, yeah, it's really made me kind of wonder about the world of pain and the physical pain that people live with.
Is that your next book?
Well, I definitely want to write about it. I mean, I'm a little bit too in it now to write about it. I do try to keep notes, but sometimes I'm just so frustrated with the pain, I can't even write anything down, you know. And also it's hard because I've had to learn to write standing up, which has been really fascinating for me. I'm right now, I'm starting to write my first piece standing up. But to me, it was all about sitting at the desk and just going deep into myself and, you know, maybe standing up once an hour, but really like writing for 3 to 5 hours every day. And that's just not going to be possible for me. Probably ever, but not for a long time.
How did you fly out here? I mean, you came from the East Coast.
It was really hard.
New York,
yeah, I mean,
right?
I got a lot of help. I got a lot of ideas from my physical therapist, but I iced every 20 minutes.
On the plane?
And I got them to like bring me ice.
So as you were sitting there, you put something on
Yeah,
your back?
I mean, unfortunately, I got a little bit of an ice burn from that actually, because I'm used to my gel pack, not ice, so I wasn't able to judge.
So it helped with your hot flashes too.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I wonder. I wonder if my hot flashes are better because I'm icing all the time. But and then I got up every 20 minutes and I walked up and down the aisles. It wasn't that bad when I was on there. I took Tylenol. I'm not on anything bigger than Tylenol. I took Tylenol. I watched a bunch of movies. So it was pretty much okay. I have to say it was really bad this morning though, like when I got out of the bed. So I think that was the payback, kind of like it was, I managed on the plane.
Because you flew in yesterday.
Yeah. I have to fly out tomorrow too, which is really, kind of hard to think about. But you don't want to stop. I mean, that's the thing. I don't want to stop my life just because of it. I mean, I guess if it got bad enough, I would, but at this point it's not ideal, but I'm alive. I want to go to Seattle. I want to talk to you. I want to be at, Seattle Town Hall. I want to do all these things. I don't want it to limit me, like, even though it's pretty profound,
Where do you get your zest?
My zest. Well, my dad is very enthusiastic. He's a very enthusiastic person. And that was a model, all the time. I mean, it was a little embarrassing sometimes as a teenager because he was like enthusiastic about everything, But I definitely now see that I have inherited that. And that's kind of a wonderful model.
So you kind of go through life with your eyes wide open, I imagine.
Very enthusiastic about things, very like excited about things. And they don't have to be big things either. Like I live in Brooklyn, and I live real close to Prospect Park, which is this beautiful park. It was designed by the famous park designer Frederick Law Olmsted, and it's just beautiful. It's wild. I mean, sometimes you're on pass on there. You won't see anybody for 20 minutes, and you can't believe that you're in the middle of crazy city, New York City, Brooklyn. It's like, and I just love it there. This was the first year that I was able to recognize the fledgling birds from the adult birds. And that was really amazing because my book has definitely brought me closer to animals. I really love animals. So I've been reading a lot of books about animals. I recently read books about all the animals I see every day. I couldn't do all the birds, but I am going to work through all of them. But I did rats, who are so much more empathetic than you would ever think. They take care of their handicapped, which is kind of incredible, right? And squirrels, which I also am really fascinated with squirrels. Mice, sparrows. I have a lot of sparrows in my yard. There was raccoon. So that was a really amazing. I read big, sort of nature guides about them just to learn like a little bit more about them because they're New Yorkers, just like me,
Mm-hmm.
So.
Did you grow up in New York?
No, well, my dad was a minister, so we moved around a lot. I kind of consider myself from Virginia, though we only moved there I think we moved there when I was 12. And then when I went away to college, that's the last time I lived there permanently. But I've been in New York now for 30 years. And I've been in Brooklyn. I really love Brooklyn. I think Brooklyn is just an incredible place to live. It's so diverse. I mean, it's just incredible. And it's really green. I mean, almost everybody, like you can, even if you live in an apartment building, your apartment building will probably have a backyard, common space, common green space. The parks are incredible. The street life is amazing. We're also very close to the beach. I mean, there's all these beautiful, Fort Tilden is this beautiful, beautiful beach. I mean, it's like famous for surfing, the Rockaways. There's a lot of natural life there, but so it kind of has the best of both. It has a lot of natural life, but it also has, that wonderful diversity, which I love, cultural diversity. And I don't know, it's just an amazing place to live.
I know your mom has passed away.
Yeah.
Were your parents together until she died?
No, my parents got divorced when I was, I think, 21, quite a while. She's been gone for 6 years. My dad is still alive. He's 83. He wanted me to score some, he likes this kind of pot gel, like CBD gel
no
that's
kidding.
here. Yeah. So he's got bursitis. So I'm not really a drug taker at all. I'll have the occasional glass of actually wine, but so I went over here to the dispensary, which was a really amazing experience, and bought him, he wrote it down for me, Flow.
It was very specific.
Yeah,
huh?
he wanted specifically, and it's a kind of like a very high concentrated gel that I think really helps his bursitis a lot. And like, why not?
Well, you can get it at the corner pharmacy. You can get CBD
here?
everything. Oh, yeah,
that's great.
But
is it high quality too?
Yeah,
That's
for
great.
sure.
Because in New York we have CBD stuff, but it's not great. I mean, it's okay. Like, it's not to the level of what you guys have here, obviously.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I didn't know that it was still that regulated. I thought
there's no dispensaries. It's not legal.
But you can still get it. You can get
CBD stuff. That's only been for about 6 months, maybe.
Okay.
You can get CBD
so
chocolate.
It'll start coming in.
I think it's very mild. No, I think we're going to have to actually get it legalized to get the good stuff that you guys have. You know what I mean? So
I see.
But we're not quite there yet. It would be kind of good to. It'd be good to do it. I was very impressed by the dispensary because, I think I had to have my ID checked 3 times. But that's how liquor stores should be. You know what I mean? Like, if we would do, I kept thinking to myself, this is great. But if we would have the same kind of stuff with liquor stores, maybe you'd have less like drunk driving of teenagers and all this stuff.
I got ID'd for kombucha the other day. It's like, are you kidding me?
That's
really?
Amazing. I'm always amazed when I get ID'd.
Yeah.
I'm just like, really?
Yeah.
Are you serious?
I was at this outdoor retailer show in Denver a couple of weeks ago, and I was surprised. They take over the convention center, and it's just booth after booth of outdoor gear. And I was amazed. There was this, I shouldn't have been surprised, but there was this one whole section that was all CBD and hemp treatments and that kind of thing. So it was neat to see. So I brought a bunch of samples back because I'll put it on my feet for running, my ankles and stuff.
And
just kind of for soreness, my knees.
I'm all for it. I'm all for anything that isn't made in a lab. Why not?
Yeah, absolutely. It's good. So if you don't mind, to get back to your mom, do you mind talking about her?
Sure.
I found it really probably indicative of her generation, the way you wrote about her in the book. And after she died, do you want to describe what happened?
Yeah. She died in a really sad and shocking way where let's see, we got the call that her newspapers were gathering on her doorstep. And then the neighbor told us this. So we said to the neighbor, we'll call the police. Why are you calling us in a way? So they called the police and they found that the back door was open, that we think now that she probably left the back door open. And then she was found dead inside. It was probably a couple days before they found her. Not too long, not more than 72 hours, they said. And then the coroner's report said that she had a heart attack, but it was hard. It was a hard death because she was only 70. She wasn't in great shape at all by any means, but she, was fully alive. I'd seen her at Christmas. She died in the end of January. It was a really hard and kind of shocking death. And there was a lot of worry for a while what actually happened.
And you said in the book too that she had thrown out her prescriptions.
Yeah, that we couldn't find, and we couldn't find any of her prescriptions. And she had type 2 diabetes. She had a lot of prescriptions, and we weren't sure whether she had forgotten to, they were all at the drugstore. Actually being filled. But that seemed kind of unlikely because it seemed unlikely that all your prescriptions would be there at once. But that's also partly what at first made us worry that maybe somebody had stolen them, that would be a thing that maybe somebody would do if they were breaking into your house. But then in the end, we wondered if she hadn't just thrown them away, she hadn't wanted, a part of me thinks, because I do think she was having some, not exactly Alzheimer's, but there was definitely some serious memory issues, I think. We were right at the point, literally within a month of saying you either need to move down near us. My brother was in New Jersey, or we need to get someone in here every day to check on you. But we were right at that point. So I wondered if she could have thrown them out by accident. But in the end, I think a part of me really thinks that she threw them out on purpose, that she didn't really want to leave her house. I don't know. I think she sort of felt like her life was over. I think my feeling is she threw them out and then she sort of deteriorated,
Yeah. My dad went the same, in a similar fashion, in that he drank himself to death. That's the way I put it bluntly.
Right. I'm so sorry to hear that.
Which is the truth. It was a long time ago.
I'm so sorry
to hear that,
though. Yeah.
Empathy back to you. I'm sorry about your mom, because that's a tragic story. But I also think that, with my dad, that he knew for a long time that he had cirrhosis. He went away on a road trip, didn't take his medication because it made him pee so that he could get the toxins out of his body, and he refused to do that.
Oh, wow.
And he came home barely able to walk up the steps and was bedridden pretty much, for the next 4 months or so.
Oh, wow.
And it's the kind of the same thing where I think he threw up his hands. My mom was getting ready to divorce him, and he kind of knew this was going on. So they make decisions.
It's a way to end your life without shooting yourself in the head, right? It's a way to actually end it in a way that seems more gentle to them somehow. And also maybe it's not quite at the front of their mind, but but there may be a place somewhere in their mind about what's happening, what they really want to do.
Yeah. And I think that if we had easier outs, that I think there wouldn't be, gosh, it sounds just so terrible and cruel, but I think that if we had easier outs, there wouldn't be so much pain at the end of life. We have these ways to extend a person's life for so long. And my dad's situation is different, but, someone who is going through a long, prolonged illness at the end of their life, there should be options.
Yeah.
I'm speaking personally.
Right.
I want options.
Yeah. I don't disagree with that. I think people should be able to choose if they're in a lot of pain, particularly. I agree with that.
And you found some letters or some things that your mom
I found I read about in that book. But I found, and that was a very important chapter for me to write because I thought a lot about her. One of the advantages of menopause, I thought, part of the menopausal insomnia for me was because I had a lot of trouble sleeping. I have that figured out now, but and I'd be up at night and I would find myself thinking a lot about my mom actually and the end of my mom's life and what she went through, what her life meant. And it was very important for me to write about her again and write about the fact that I was thinking about her. So that was a very important part of the book for me. So part of that, menopausal insomnia, was I had all these boxes of hers in my closet. I'd gotten through, I don't know if you when someone dies, it's like an endless process of, you clear out the house once, but then you bring stuff to your house, and then you go through those boxes.
I still have those boxes.
Yeah, and then there'll be a few boxes that you've kept, but then you realize, do you really need all those things? It's kind of an endless, winnowing down of the things that you want to keep from these loved ones. But so I had this box, and it was really on one of these insomnia, menopausal insomnia nights that I finally went through it, and I found these journals that she had written, and it was interesting because there were probably 3 or 4 of them, and there were only maybe the first 20 pages would be written. I mean, they're obviously from different parts of her life. Maybe the first 20 parts, the first 20 pages, would be actually written on, and the rest would be blank. But it was interesting to hear. I mean, I know from being a journal writer myself that you often bring your darkest self to your journal. You bring your anxieties, you bring your worries, you bring your anger. You don't always bring all the lovely things that happen to you during the day, like the small meetings that you have with people that cheer you up and all that stuff. So,
well, I look at that.
Yeah.
I look at that as in Harry Potter, he had a pensive. He had a way that he wrote things down and then put them in this a big cauldron. And that's how I look at it. It's like if I get this out of me and I put it somewhere else, then it's out of me. I can keep the loveliness to myself.
I mean, it can be really shocking though. I had my daughter just had this happen with her grandmother. A journal was found that was extremely dark about her life, especially her later life. And it was really hard for my daughter to hear about and to read. And that's where I said, I'm not in any way diminishing your grandmother's suffering or what she went through, but I want to remind you that you do bring your darkest self to your journal. I mean, that's just the truth of the matter. But it was amazing to read about my mom. It was hard because there was some stuff about my father. There was some stuff about us, but it was also great. I felt like I was getting to know her. It was painful, but I also was getting to know, I knew about a lot of her struggles because she was not shy about telling them. That was one thing about my mom.
But she had wishes. She had
some hopes for herself. She was probably a lifelong depressed person. I've struggled my whole life with depression. I know it runs in our family, and she never was really willing to do anything about that. So that was hard. Just year after year of depression. It takes its toll on a body and on a mind, and on your family and whatnot.
And so much of that is generational, though.
Yeah, it's hard. She just could never think, again, shame. She could never think of it as just it's a disease like any other. We need to treat this thing, so she wasn't easy. She was very formidable, but it made me feel close to her, to read her journals, to think about her life, to think about her life. I think of this moment as a very feminist moment. I really am thrilled with that, and so just to think of the struggles that she really has gone through, more with a clearer view. I think going through menopause really helped me with that too, to really see what her life had been like. So I was able to write about her with a little more clarity. I've written about her quite a bit, and I feel maybe I will continue to do so. It just seems like I'm never done. I feel like my relationship with her is never over, but it helped me a lot to think about her as a woman moving through a certain time period and what she had to go through. It helped me a lot to think of her in a new way. And I'll say she's been gone for 6 years, 7 years, and our relationship continues, it's kind of better than ever. I feel like and that wasn't true in the first few years. She was gone. I can remember having a dinner with my brothers and I at the year anniversary, and we were both still kind of angry. We were both angry about the way she went out. We were angry about her just endless unhappiness and that she didn't do anything about it, I feel like now I have a stronger sense of who she was and what she had to put up with. I have more respect for her. I sort of understand that her anger was kind of what she gave to me in a weird way. She didn't have a lot to give, but that was one thing that she actually gave me, is her kind of righteous anger. And I see that as a real gift now.
Do you feel like what you've done with the book, because it is such a departure from your other writing, is kind of paying it forward? You learned from your mom, you're learning through your menopause process, and now you're helping a generation or generations of women kind of through what you've learned?
Well, I don't think it's so different than my other books. I want to make that clear. I think the prose style is kind of similar. And I actually think, I wrote a book called Suicide Blonde in which I talked a lot about the female body and sort of the sexual female body. And so I feel like in a weird way, it's like the culmination. Like I've always enjoyed writing about the physical life of the body. So I feel like in all my books have that really intensely. So I feel like it's kind of like, it's not so much a departure. It's like the fruit of like my long career writing about the body has finally brought me to this point where I can write into this extremely universal female experience. Okay. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is, paying it forward. I mean, I definitely wrote the book partly, for my daughter, who's 23, like in her generation. Like it's been interesting too, because I feel like it's been accepted definitely by a lot. I mean, there's been a lot of enthusiasm, which has just blown me away. The level of, I've never had a book so adored right out of the gate. It's just been amazing. And also people like writing me these beautiful things about their struggles. And when I go out and read, like this one, I was reading in Astoria, Queens last week, and it was a small gathering of maybe 20 people, but this one, and so that made the Q&A really great, because people felt like they could really share. This one woman told the story of her like hysterectomy. It was such an amazing story, the struggle, and I just felt so grateful that I have written a text where women feel comfortable actually sharing these things. It made me so happy. Though I also think there's been some mixed reviews, and those have mostly come from women my own age or older. And I think that's where there is still this shame thing we're talking about. I mean, it's completely fine if they don't like the book. That's their prerogative. But a lot of the things they don't like about it sort of have to do with this idea that menopause is bad. You know what I mean? Like how dare you, portray it as something possibly freeing. So, and then there's been an incredible. I did a reading in New York in this very young bookstore. Like this woman that worked at the bookstore, she's probably 25. She came up to me and she said, I had no idea. I'm going to have all my friends read this. So the fact that younger women have also been so enthusiastic, and that surprises me because I feel like at 25, I think there's more interest now because there's less shame about all the life cycles of the female body. And so they want to know what's going to happen to their bodies, and so that really thrills me. And then the women just before, like in their 40s, there's been a lot of like, because they're the ones like us who are looking for information. So they're sort of like, finally, we kept looking at, WebMD. I mean, not that there's not good stuff on WebMD, but, we keep looking for these menopause things online. And finally, there's this book. So I feel like a lot of interest has been from women across the board and also some men. I have to say, some of my radio shows, you'll get this call, not a lot, but you might get like, every radio show, you get like one call from a man who'll say like, my wife's about to go through this change. Like, how can I help her? I'm just like, oh my God. Okay. That's amazing. Okay. Juan from Florida called on on like an NPR show. And I was just like, I love you. And like, if I wrote the book just for that, it would be worth it, And then several men wrote to me saying, because I wrote about, I can't remember. Oh, I wrote a short essay in Time magazine, and several men wrote to me and said, "I'm so glad you wrote this, and I had no idea that my wife went through this." And but they also asked for more solid things they could do.
Yeah, because it's not a how-to book. It's
not at all.
It's not like an advice book, right?
And it's not. And and I would write back to them just briefly. I'm just like, okay, first of all, communication. If she seems hot, you can get her a cold pack from the fridge. Never, ever make fun of her. She may have different sexual interests in bed. Her desires may change. Be open to that. You know what I mean? I try to just like give a few things. Probably I'm going to write something about this since like these men, like they're interested and there's really nowhere. I've never read anything for them.
No.
Which is crazy. No. Again, it's insane, So that's been amazing. So the male readers as well, that's like an amazing thing too. Oh, I had a woman right before I left New York, like a woman wrote to me and told me she had just given the book to her 23-year-old son because they had talked about ideas of gender and different things. And so he was loving it. So that just thrills me so much. I mean, I'd like to have a wide variety of readers, so far it looks like that's kind of true. So that makes me really, really happy.
Well, certainly I went through it and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to get a copy for so-and-so and for this person.
Yes, I love
it.
Please do.
There is a young person in my life who who's gone through some physical issues. I can't recall exactly what it was. I don't know if she had a hysterectomy, but she's a young person, so she's gone through.
Right.
She's gone through hot flashes.
Right.
And so, I just thought, oh, this is good for these folks. So.
Yeah, there's really no, I don't try to come to any conclusions. It's more just an exploration, and also a really honest, physical telling of my own experiences. Yeah.
But it's nice to be able to relate to someone. That's the nice thing about the book. Is
that's what I hoped.
oh yeah, I can relate to that.
Yeah.
So, is there anything that you want to cover that I haven't brought up or that we haven't talked about?
No, you've been a very good interviewer, I think. Not that I can really think of.
I end these conversations by asking, because it's the She's Bold podcast.
Right.
What does it mean to you to be bold?
It's interesting because I was thinking about this because I watched, on the plane here yesterday, I watched both the new, Aretha Franklin, amazing documentary. Oh, it's amazing. And then also the Joan Jett documentary.
That was a good one. I saw that.
Amazing. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking to myself, again, how can I, move this energy forward? It's I guess to me, as a writer, I want to be as honest as I can be. To me, that's what, boldness is about, being honest, really being honest about your own experience. I could talk about, doing free water swimming, and I love all that. I swim across this lake, as much as I can in the summer, in upstate New York, and those things make me feel good and bold and connected to the earth. But as far as actually being as courageous as I can, it has to do with being really, really open in my writing, just as honest as possible. Even when the truths don't make me look good, I think those are the ones that are the hardest to tell.
How do you do that without self-censoring?
Well, you try to, it's hard enough just to figure out what you are feeling and, to actually follow your actual thoughts and emotions and figure those out is hard. So I don't know. Sometimes, if something scares me that I've thought, I often will try to figure out why, and if it seems like maybe I'll think, oh, that would make people think I'm a bad person. But then I think to myself, would it? Hasn't everyone felt that way? So I try to figure out, I try to, rather than, I don't know. I feel like when you think of self-censoring, you think about trying to make yourself look good or look positive, but writing doesn't really work that way. Nobody cares. Nobody wants people want it to relate to a real human who does things that are bad. You know what I mean? Who may be bold sometimes, but also is not bold sometimes. You know what I mean? And a real human has a lot of flaws and a lot of weaknesses. And so the whole life of writing, or the kind of writing I do that I've done in my life, is about trying to be honest about those weaknesses so you can connect to the audience. So you can connect to the reader, as deeply as you can, and you connect through weakness. I don't know. I just don't know how much. Sometimes you can connect with strength, but it has to be through weakness and then strength. You know what I mean? I don't think just purely strength really connects you to anybody.
Thanks for that. So where can people find you? Your website? Are you on social media?
I am. I'm DarceySteinke.com, and I'm not going to remember all my social media tags, but I'm on everything.
I'll make sure I follow up and I get your social media
and I
handles.
think if you go to DarceySteinke.com and you go to contact, my social media handles are there. But I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, and I'm on Facebook, and I would be happy to be in touch with all your listeners there.
Great. And I'll make sure that everything gets linked to. And thanks so much for making the time.
This is great. Thanks so much.
I appreciate it. Now I'm going to go have some ice water. I really hope you found value in that conversation and that you'll share it with others. I think it's a really important topic to kind of break open and look at with interest and intrigue, as Darcey does, rather than shame. You can find Darcey's book, Flash Count Diary, wherever you find your books. And there will be a link in the show notes to Amazon, but I also encourage you to support your local bookstore and ask for it there. If you'd like to win a copy of her book, just sign up for the She's Bold podcast newsletter at shesboldpodcast.com/newsletter. I'll simply alert you each time a new episode is released. And I'll give you until the end of the month to sign up for that newsletter, the month of July, and I will then randomly choose a winner on August 1st, and that'll be amongst all the current subscribers. And that will have to be a winner in the U.S. That's the only place that I can ship to. So for links to all the things we chatted about in this episode, go to shesboldpodcast.com/ episodes, and there you will find the show notes for this and all of my other conversations. You can also find those links and show notes in whatever podcast app it is you're using to listen to this. If you'd like to support the show and let me know how much you are inspired by these conversations and how much you look forward to hearing all of this positive information in a time when we are surrounded by really kind of a lot of negativity, go to shesboldpodcast.com/Patreon. Patreon supporters get access to bonus content, which is usually in the form of a question I ask the guest after we've done the main recording. This week, you'll find out what Darcey's secret is to a good night of sleep. Don't forget to check out my tours at wandertours.com. I've got trips to Morocco, Papua New Guinea, and culinary tours to Seattle and Santa Fe coming up. You can connect with me by friending me on Facebook, and I'm WonderGal on Instagram. Ladies, you can join the Be Bold Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/BeBoldGroup for support and encouragement for whatever ways you're trying to be bold. Thanks for joining me for another episode of the She's Bold podcast. And until next time, be bold.